So we closed the transaction. I'm like, you know what? I did what I needed to do. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a call about 5 days later, from the agent that represented the sellers for this house.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, what's going on? And she goes, what's happening to the house? And I'm like, what do you mean what's happening to it? What's going on? And she's like, why is it on the market for sale? And I'm like, what do you mean it's on the market for sale? She goes, yeah, there's a for sale sign in the front yard. And I just talked to the agent and she's selling the house.
What? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Behind the Lockbox. I'm Stephanie Zalowski. Cam is gone today, but she will be back next week. But today, we have Aaron Escobedo with us. Hello. So we've known Aaron since our Pacific Sotheby's days, like what feels like eons ago.
It does.
I mean, it's almost 10 years. He is with our very own brokerage Compass, and he's on Ramon Maldonado's team. Y'all might remember Ramon, episode 13. If you haven't watched it, please go see it. Go check it out. Aaron has been in business since 2017. He's quite the little entrepreneur. We probably won't have time to get into that, but he's got some stories.
Part two.
A part two. Ooh, let's do a part two. He has been selling here in California since then, and we just spoke. I know you've got a couple stories for us. So welcome to Behind the Lockbox.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank
This
you
is
for
great.
being here. So a couple weeks ago, I ran into you. You are back in town. You went down to Florida, did some other stuff for a little while, came back, and I saw you, and you literally said to me, I have a story for you. And so I think that maybe you should start with that because, by the way, my parents are going to listen to this and they want to remember they were with me and they were like, my dad's like, what's the story? I'm like, no, don't tell me. I want to be surprised. So they're going to want to hear this too. So why don't you hit us with that first story?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll starting my real estate career.
Okay.
And my very first transaction.
Oh, it's always the first transaction.
Yes.
It gets you. It either is like, oh, that was pretty easy, or you're like questioning all your life decisions.
This to date was the most challenging transaction.
Oh, shit.
Mostly because of the emotional side of it. Right?
Okay.
It was incredibly high, incredibly lows.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Okay.
So I'm in Florida. I'm in Miami Beach working for Grant Cardone.
Okay. For anyone who doesn't know, I think everyone knows who that is. But if you
Grant
don't, look him up.
Yep.
Shout out to Grant.
Shout out to Grant.
Yes.
And so my mom and my former stepdad were getting a divorce.
Okay.
And so life was transitioning for them.
Sure.
And so they had their home on the market, a beautiful home in Carlsbad.
Okay.
Off of Palomar Airport Road.
Oh, such a great area.
And just an amazing home, a great community.
Yeah.
And my mom had an agent representing them who's been in the business forever.
Okay.
Hadn't sold a lot of properties in the past few years. So we kind of know how that goes. And just really did a terrible job representing the property. And while I was working for Grant, selling sales training, I had created a niche to working with real estate companies and insurance companies.
Oh, cool.
And so
you were getting a taste of like the business a little bit. Yeah.
So it transitioned from cold calling car dealerships and crazy. Part two.
Yeah.
And so it transitioned from car dealerships to as the business grew into other verticals.
Wow.
I happened to fall into real estate and insurance, and that was my little niche. And so talking and working with so many real estate companies, and so many knuckleheads in the business.
Yes.
I had a good idea of what the business was like, just on the outside.
Sure.
And so at the time, my mom's house wasn't selling, it wasn't moving.
How long had it been on the market?
I want to say 8 months.
Oh, damn.
9 months. It was grossly overpriced.
Even back then, that's a long time.
It was significantly overpriced, which is why.
Right.
Not by a little bit, by a lot.
Oh, wow.
And just did a terrible job representing.
Yeah.
So they were on the brink of firing the agent. And I said, look, if the house doesn't sell, I'm going to come back to San Diego and I'm going to sell the house. And kind of cheeky, but...
Your mom's like, okay, I'm holding you to that.
So a few months later, after I said that, I got the phone call. House isn't selling. We're not going to re-sign with the agent.
You said you're coming back.
You said you're coming back.
Yeah.
You want to help us out.
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? If there's ever a time for me to jump into this, now would be a great time.
100%.
And I said, let's do it.
Wow.
So I left working for Grant, came back to San Diego.
Wow.
Linked up at Sotheby's with Ramon.
Yep.
And started working for him on the team.
The rest is history.
The rest was history. He took the listing.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, we need to find a buyer for the property. Time was of the essence.
Of course.
And so what did I start
Especially
doing?
it had been what, almost a year at that point that it had been on, and they're going through a divorce.
been
Like
close
that's
to a
just
year.
a stressful time.
Very stressful. We're going into the holidays.
Yep.
This is toward the end of 2017.
Okay.
Basically Q4 of 2017, the beginning of Q4.
Okay.
And so we had to get this thing moved.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back and Ramon puts me to work. I start doing open houses and I start door knocking and cold calling and just trying to create activity.
Something. Try to find a buyer.
Something.
Right.
So found a buyer.
Question. Did you guys lower the price?
We did lower the price.
Okay. So to a more reasonable, okay.
Significantly.
Okay, good.
Where it needed to be.
Okay, good.
So I found a buyer, came to the open house and loved the property, but they had been watching this house. They'd been watching it. They knew all about it. And when we lowered the price, I had contacted them. They came to the open house and really interested, but way out of their price range.
Okay.
By almost $300,000.
Oh, geez. And that's not like, sometimes when it's like,
we're not talking
25, 50, you're like, I can figure that out somehow, but no, 300 is a lot.
So the price, the home was priced around 1.4.
Okay.
1.4, 1.5.
Okay.
So their max budget was 1.1.
Okay.
But they were the only family that was really, truly interested in this house. They loved the property. They had adopted kids. They wanted to, this was a 5-bedroom house. It's a beautiful home. So it needed rooms to be filled.
Yeah.
So they were planning on having more kids or adopting more kids.
Wow, good for them.
So it was a great match. What they wanted this was the home that they wanted to grow into, but they wanted to buy something for a little while, save some money, and then be able to buy a larger home.
Sure.
And I basically said, look, let's just skip that step and let's get you into this one. This is everything you guys want. I had to do a little Grant Cardoning on them. But they were the perfect buyer, and I knew that. And they were really our only opportunity to get this thing sold.
Right, because again, no one else is really banging down the door to buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So a lot of conversations, a lot of back and forth. And, I must have showed it 5 or 6 times to them. Where they came, they brought the kids. The kids were running around playing. And mind you, I'm the son of the parent selling the home. Ramon is listing the property.
Right.
And here I am, potentially representing the buyer for the home.
Right.
So just let that sink in for a second.
It's a lot of emotion.
For my very first transaction, by the way. So, a lot of back and forths, and we end up putting an offer together.
Okay.
And they got them way out of their budget.
Okay.
And little cardoning on them, built some value, and we were able to at least get an offer, get an offer accepted.
That's amazing.
But at the time, it was tough because at what point do I have to reveal I'm the son of the sellers?
Yeah, because we have to disclose everything.
You have to disclose everything.
Right.
So I didn't want to say all that up front.
Right.
And turn them off and scare them away.
Right.
Because this was our only chance. So I was like an eagle on with a fish. Like I had to
totally.
They were hooked in. And I couldn't let them go.
You were like really trying we got to make this work somehow.
And they loved the house. They were the perfect buyer. And I didn't want them to get in their own way.
Yeah.
And lose this opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, I had to get them to stretch their budget and we had to make it work. And so we did. And as we started the transaction, I had to start obviously revealing and disclosing my relationship with the sellers.
Right.
And that didn't go well.
Really?
That didn't go well at all.
Oh,
so the client was a very, very savvy business person, entrepreneur, very sharp, but also very skeptical.
Okay.
Because of the circumstances.
Right.
And so here I am representing him with my parents' home.
Yeah.
So how do I fiduciarily
Were you on the listing or was it just Ramon?
No, just Ramon.
Okay. Which,
So it was, and then mind you, it's another part of it, right? He's on the listing side.
Right.
So we have to negotiate.
Right. When you're on the same team.
We're on the same team. So
he's a tough cookie too, that Ramon. I know. I know.
So I'm working with my partner who's representing the sellers. This is my parents' home.
Right.
And I have the buyer who's our last hope.
Right.
Basically.
And now they're pissed at you.
I can't let them go. And so as we start to get into it, he was a tough negotiator. He was asking for all kind of credits and he knew what he was doing.
Of course.
But at one point when he found out, he basically completely ghosted me. And, I don't remember the nuances, but he found out about me first. before I got a chance to say something.
Yeah.
So once we put everything together and it was, okay, now is the time I need to have a conversation.
He was like, hey.
He goes, I know who you are, basically. And I know your relationship with the sellers.
Oh, no.
So that made it more difficult.
Do you and your mom have the same last name?
We do.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So he was probably just doing a quick little
just
Google.
Just checking out the sellers. Who are they? Wait a second. This guy has the same name.
Yep.
What's the deal here?
Yep.
So that was a tough conversation.
Yeah.
And he made it extremely difficult.
Especially for someone like you who's not trying to be, you're not a disingenuous person.
No.
Like you are so honest and so upfront about everything. So to then
there's a time and a place.
Yes, and you were trying to find the right time, and then
correct.
You're like, I'm not like trying to,
Yes, and so because I was doing everything with so much integrity, ethically, but I also didn't want to lose this opportunity for everybody. To time all that was tough.
It's very tough.
And so he found out before I was able to share. That was an extremely difficult conversation.
Yeah, and
basically just went ghost for a couple weeks. Didn't return phone calls, didn't, and that was...
He also knew what he was doing there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I finally got him back in communication with me, he took advantage of that and really tried to squeeze everything possible out of this for him because I'm representing him where I'm living in the house, as I just moved back.
Right.
And so he understood all the dynamics of that.
Right.
And just made it very difficult to try to get anything done. It was asking for things that were just unreasonable.
At any point, did you match that energy and just kind of almost tell him to piss off or no? Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. It was, as we were getting more into the transaction, things were getting more dicey with the relationship, and we had to get this thing closed. There was no...
Did you have any communication with his wife? Or was it just him?
Yeah, well, I did, but he was the main point of contact.
Yeah. Okay.
After the showings and once we got into the transaction,
it was just him. Yeah.
I don't remember even having your phone number.
Oh yeah.
So it was tough. And so we had to have a real heart-to-heart conversation. And I had basically shared with him everything that was happening, had to divulge my whole story.
Get vulnerable, and hopefully that'll pull him in.
Get vulnerable at the house.
Yep.
We both had a teary-eyed moment after we had a chance to share.
Wow.
I was able to kind of win him over and turn the corner.
Yeah.
Once we went through a difficult...
This is your wheelhouse.
It was.
We were talking offline. Aaron's going to write a book, and he's coming back for part 2 and 3. Anyway,
part 2 and 3.
Part 2 and 3.
So
that's crazy.
It was very. So for me, not knowing what I'm doing, asking my business partner for help to navigate through all this while we're trying to negotiate.
Yeah.
While I'm in the house with my mom, who understands everything that's going on.
That is so many dynamics that the normal agent does not deal with or put up. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't come across that all the time.
There's so much to it. It's even hard to articulate all the little details about it. But the amount of emotional highs and lows that
roller coaster.
The roller coaster was insane.
We ride that regardless, but then to have, again, those dynamics involved.
And mind you, this was my first transaction.
Oh my God.
So I had no idea what I was doing other than just,
Yeah, you don't have like other things to put it up against.
Right.
Like, oh, normally it goes like this, but this is just happening because of X, Y, and Z. Like, this is literally your only reference point.
Correct. So imagine being the buyer, being represented by someone who's never done a deal before, who's the son of the sellers. For him, looking back, I understand his concerns. I understand where he's coming, and rightfully so.
Totally.
And, I tried so hard to do all the right things. And the way things unraveled, I had to make all that right.
Right.
And that was tough.
Yeah.
But what a great transaction to learn on. So ultimately, we got the deal done.
Wow.
And it was incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
I needed a mental health break after that transaction.
You're like, I'm going back to Florida. Grant, I'm coming back to work for you.
Yeah.
Like, forget this business.
I'm done with the real estate. I'm out of here.
That's it.
This is how it is.
One and done. It's all it took. Ramon's like, no, I swear they're not all like that. He lied to you. They are all like that. Just kidding.
It was, and even he'll be the first one to admit that was That was a
The
crazy,
wild one.
crazy
Yeah.
dynamic.
And he's had some wild stories.
And he said he's had a lot of wild stories.
A lot.
But, I really appreciated how he was able to coach me through that experience, navigate through the emotions and the intricacies of the deal.
He's good with that.
Totally.
Yeah. I go to him for advice quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's amazing.
Yeah, he is.
So there was a lot to it. And, for that being my very first transaction, that's probably the most difficult transaction because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I was tripping over my feet, literally falling over every step, every contingency. What is this? And trying to explain and articulate that.
Yeah, you're learning in the moment, but then you're also trying to save the deal.
Yes.
And you don't even know how to save a deal because you've never had to save a deal.
And this is my family that needed to get this sold for personal reasons.
Yeah.
So there was incredible amounts of pressure and urgency.
That's insane.
So,
dude,
but we got it done. And
I'm not surprised, but yes.
Yep. We got it done. There was no fail to this deal. We had to figure it out and we made it work.
That's crazy.
And
have you had any, is that, you said but that's by far the craziest one you've had to date.
It has to be one of the most memorable.
All of the dynamics coming into play.
Because of the dynamics.
Yeah. You've had other crazy ones, but nothing with every single one of those things at play.
I mean, it takes the cake with how complex it was, how new I was in the business, not knowing what I'm doing. So just in every sense of the word with the difficulty of the transaction has to be my most memorable one for sure.
I mean, we say it all the time. Like there's stuff that comes up. Like I just admitted a couple weeks ago, or it's probably been a month or two now on a podcast, I just sold my first house with septic. Like after almost 10 years.
Okay.
I've never done a deal with septic. And the agent, God love her, she's been on this podcast, Sabrina Covington, love you. She literally was so wonderful. She was like, I'll walk you through it. Here's what you need to do. Like made sure everything got pumped and certified. It's like, how have I never done this after 9 years? Like what? Like there's stuff that comes up all the time that I'm like, okay, this is new. Don't know how to navigate this one. But which
is great. And that's realistic. Every transaction is like
everyone is
like
different.
A thumbprint, right?
Yes.
Every transaction is so unique.
Yep.
Which is what makes the business interesting and fun
100%.
and keeps it challenging.
100%.
Keeps you learning and growing.
Always.
But
always.
this was a huge
doozy.
Slap in the face introduction. Welcome to real estate.
Sink or swim, bud. Sink or swim. Yeah. And thank God you had Ramon though.
Yeah, Ramon was amazing.
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for a better partner and coach through that process.
It's true. Yeah.
And because of all the prospecting and the door knocking and the calling, I was able to get a good amount of business, and that was what really helped kind of
propelled you.
Launch the business.
That's amazing. See?
So
the sun comes up.
It does.
It does. It always does.
It always rises.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know how you're going to beat that, but I asked you when you came in how many others. You're like, I've got a couple other crazy ones. Yeah. You want to hit us with another one?
We all have some crazy ones.
Dude.
Yes.
I mean, my God. Every week.
So, yes. So the next one was equally as challenging.
Okay.
And so I'll tell you a little bit about how I procured this deal.
Okay.
So as you know, on our team, telephone prospecting is really the majority of how we procure business.
Mm-hmm.
And so calling expired listings and canceled listings is really our main proactive prospecting.
For anyone
approach.
who doesn't know, it's very difficult to do. And I commend you guys because not my thing.
Well, either you do two things. Either you're on an appointment or you're looking for one.
Yeah.
And in the business,
always,
most people default to paying for Zillow leads, ads, to try to get people to
come to them.
Right. So our approach was to, let's skip all that. Let's not pay for that. Let's just go direct to the consumer.
Right.
Skip all that and keep our business way more profitable, keep our expenses way lower.
Which you guys have been very successful at, by the way. Yep.
So I prospected an expired listing in Bonsall.
Damn.
Bonsall, an area I'd never heard of Bonsall before. She had a home in Bonsall.
Okay.
Really cool property. She had a huge avocado farm.
Ooh.
Massive avocado farm.
Yep.
I'm a big avocado guy. So
Me too. Awesome. You're like, ooh, can I come out there and pick some avocados?
Yeah, right? Mm-hmm. So she was a widow. And let me just describe this lady.
Please paint me a picture.
She's about
I love it.
4'10", maybe 4'11" on a good day.
Love it.
And she had the whitest white hair, the most robust curly haired Afro puff hairstyle
Love
I've
it.
ever seen. She's
Love
a little short little thing, spitfire of a lady.
And you at least got, when you made the phone call, she answered, took your call, you were able to talk to her and set this appointment. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Cold called her. I don't know her. She doesn't know me.
Right.
We got into communication, set an appointment, drove out to Bonsall.
How many days in between from when you called her, you think?
I have no idea.
Listen, I'm just here to ask the hard-hitting questions.
I've made
You know what I mean?
thousands of phone calls to know that.
But
Well,
all you
what I
remember
will say
is her white hair. I love it. And that she's like 4'11". She sounds adorable.
She
Was.
looked adorable. Yes. She's a gremlin in disguise.
Oh my God, gremlin in disguise.
I hope she's not going to see this, by the way.
By the way, I think that's the name of this episode. I do this with every episode. Like someone will say something and I'm like, there it is. That's the name of the episode. Anyway, gremlin in disguise. Okay.
So I showed up to the house. She was a widow.
Sad.
And, sat and listened to her story for 3 hours and ended up,
So patient.
yes, he was patient with her. I'm still learning the business. This is a transaction this was in end of 2018,
Okay.
2019.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've gotten my feet wet in the business.
Totally.
I've gotten through some tough deals, obviously.
clearly.
I was due for another one.
Yeah.
Yep, it was time.
The universe is like, no, not yet. We're going
Yep.
to show you another
Things
lesson.
are going really nice and smooth, and here we go.
Yeah.
So I went there for the listing to
Okay.
potentially help her sell the property. She hadn't secured a subject property yet, but
Okay.
where she wanted to live was in the old historic district in Escondido.
Okay. I know it.
That was her jam.
Yep.
So since her husband died 7 years prior, she had been looking at houses in that district for
Okay.
7 years,
Okay.
but never pulled the trigger on anything. Couldn't find what she liked. So she didn't need to sell to buy something.
Okay.
She wasn't in that situation,
Which is good.
which was good,
Yeah.
right? And so I said, look, why don't we, she wasn't too sure about selling the property. She just was on the fence about it. It needed some work. But she was really motivated to try to find a property to purchase.
Okay.
And I said,
was it a lot of upkeep considering it had
it was.
avocado trees and
Yes,
it was a bigger house?
way more than she could handle.
Yeah.
Than she could handle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she should have sold it. She needed to sell it, but
Mm-hmm.
she was too emotionally connected to the property to let it go for the price that it needed to sell.
Sure.
Wasn't realistic on price.
Sure.
Hence why it didn't sell. So it expired
Previously,
because
right.
it was just overpriced.
Yeah. And she was a gremlin, come to find out.
She was a yes. little grandma gremlin.
Behind the Lockbox is sponsored by Property Showcase Group. Property Showcase Group has a team of creatives, directors, producers, editors, marketing specialists, and designers that work in tandem to tell and share stories of the built environment. Whether you're looking for full-service production or simply just need content creation, Property Showcase Group can help take your business to the next level. To learn more or to contact Property Showcase Group to schedule a consultation, you can find them at propertyshowcasegroup.com. That's spelled PROPERTYSHOWCASEGROUP.com. PropertyShowcaseGroup.com.
And I'm going back and trying to recap. So
No, it's okay.
So we didn't end up listing the property. And I said, look, why don't let's put our effort to try to find you an off-market property in that old historic district. So what I want you to do is I want you to drive up and down the streets, and I want you to get me a list of the addresses on the streets of the houses that you would love to own.
Right.
So she did.
Okay.
So she actually followed directions, drove
Okay.
up and down the street,
Okay.
was really nice about this whole process. Things were nice and smooth and fun
Great.
and light and fluffy, just like her hair. And I'm talking a big white Afro puff, looked like a giant cloud.
I
on
can
top of
picture
her
it.
head.
Yeah, she went
You
to the
know,
salon and
I
got
just
that
wanted
done,
to- I wanted to, what's going on up there?
Let me stick my hands in there.
Yeah. So
Buddy.
just a character, and man, she's tiny little,
Tiny. Yeah.
4'10",
Oh my
4'11",
God. Adorable.
adorable. So she comes back and emails me, I think 6 or 7 properties, and okay, great, this is a start.
Okay.
So we sent out letters to all 7 houses.
Okay.
And we got a response. Letter was, hey, I've got a client that's looking to purchase in the neighborhood, loves your home.
Mm-hmm.
Would you consider selling the property for the right price?
Mm-hmm.
So I get a call 2 weeks later
Wow.
from an agent in Escondido who says, hey, you sent a letter
Mm-hmm.
to my client on behalf of your client that wants to, potentially purchased the home.
You're like, hell yeah, I did.
I said, yes, I did. Let's do a deal.
Let's come see it. Come on.
So she set up a showing. We went to go take a look at it, checked all the boxes, and everything was great.
Okay.
Right? These are homes that are built in 1905, 1910, old school.
Yes.
Some of the oldest homes in San Diego.
Yeah, for sure.
By far.
Yep.
So there's a lot of nuances to these properties that
some of them need a lot of work.
Tons of work. The whole sewer systems are different. Everything
is different.
So different.
Yeah.
From the outside and inside, everything checked the boxes. The right street, just the style of the home. She felt comfortable. It was a total grandma house.
Love it.
You know, you've got the porch, and you've got the little bench on the porch, and she just wanted to hang out there and talk to the neighbors and just kind of hang out with her cats and do her thing, right? Total grandma style. And it was a great fit. So we ended up going into escrow, and this is where things get a little bit tricky.
Boy.
Because when things are going nice and smooth, you'd never count your chickens before they hatch.
Never.
And even when they hatch, you got to make sure that
I double check it. I'm like, does this check really go in my account? Are we good? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't count until you see the numbers in your
in
account.
my account. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
So 1905 build. So let's go back 100 plus years. When they built homes back then, they don't build homes the way they do now. Correct. Line them next. There weren't enough people to build that way.
And some would argue they don't build them like they used to. Like they're great houses. Yeah. But again, lots of ins and outs that if you have not been in one and have not been in, I've sold many historic homes, and it's a completely separate ballgame.
They're super charming.
Yes.
Tons of character, really cute properties.
But present a different handful of problems potentially. Yeah.
But, you know, from the outside, but when you start with they look great.
Yeah.
Right? But when you start, you go through your due diligence periods and you get into inspections.
Yep.
So, but you have to know up front what you're getting yourself
into.
You know up front that these are going to be different and, you know, there's more risk involved.
Totally.
But this is what she wanted. We found her the house.
We got to make it happen.
It worked. So she loved the home. She goes, we got to do whatever we can to make this work.
Sure.
So we're going through our inspections and come to find out the sewer lines just aren't adding up right. The dynamics of the plumbing infrastructure was just really off.
Okay.
The inspectors weren't too sure what was going on, and things it wasn't a normal plumbing system.
Okay.
Normal sewer systems, you have the line that runs out to the middle of the road for most properties, most homes, right? And then the sewer line goes under the house and goes to the main valve in the middle of the road.
Right.
Someplace.
Right.
Typically, if it's a normal street.
For sure.
Well, so let's go back to 1905. These are historic homes, and they were all spread out. They're not right next to each other.
Right. And they're not evenly next to each other either.
They're all in different. Right. Yeah, different. Back then, there weren't even really roads.
Streets.
They were just areas.
Right.
We're going to build a house here, and we'll build one here, and we'll build one here, and everybody will be happy. So this particular home had the sewer line went under the house. Come to find out, it attached to the house. There was a house next to it, actually, that was historic. So ironically enough, there's two homes next to each other that were both historic.
Okay.
So these two homes, come to find out, shared the same sewer line.
Oh God.
And so this is discovered after multiple inspectors, and we had teams coming out to try to figure out where is it.
Were they putting the camera down and it was like ending basically? They're like, why isn't it going out to the street?
Correct.
But it was in the middle. There was some other connector that they didn't see.
Other connectors, and
sometimes the camera can't make a turn, and then they're like, I don't know where it goes, and without digging up the yard, you're not going to find it, right?
Or the road,
or the road,
street, or the homes across the street.
Yeah.
So it got really tricky and complicated. Well, what's going on? Where is this sewer line running to? So so the city didn't have any information about this. They just didn't have records.
Back then, correct.
So the client and I went to the city. We were trying to do our due diligence to get as much as we can to find out what's happening. What's the deal with the guts of this home? What does the plumbing look like?
Right. And they're like, we have no idea.
So her and I went to the city multiple times, try to get as much information, and the city didn't have records that were very clear. But after a lot of attempts of digging, and there has to be something here. I mean, there's got to be something with these homes. So we did find some stuff after a tremendous amount of digging.
Wow.
Come to find out that the two houses, they shared a sewer line that went under the street, and now there's rows of streets, right? After 100 plus years of development.
Yeah.
It's a normal neighborhood.
Right.
Well, about 300 yards across what's now called the street, right? There was a creek bed that ran, about 300 yards away.
Okay.
And so the sewer line was connected to that creek bed. Well, that creek bed was on the other side of the street. So I'm the subject property.
Yeah.
The neighbor's here. You're the other side of this street.
Right.
So the sewer line went under the road, under your house, under the house across on the backside of you, and connected to the sewer line on the other side of the street, which back then was the creek bed.
Oh my God.
So it made sense for them back then to connect it and have it go to a creek bed to have everything
Flushed out. That's, yeah.
But they never took in consideration, right, having a 300-yard sewer line that runs under the road, under your house, across the street, under the house, the other to the backside of you, connects to that road. So whose responsibility is it when you have a sewer line? It's the seller's. Always.
To the connection to the main line. But
main line, which is usually in the middle of the road.
Street, right. And
it
it doesn't run under people's houses and creek beds and all kinds of other shit.
It doesn't in a normal circumstance.
Right.
But I somehow love
just find yourself in these predicaments. Just find yourself in these predicaments.
I do. So this was becoming just
I mean, how many weeks of due diligence are you in at this point?
So by this point, great question. We had extended our inspection period.
You would have had to
3 times.
Oh yeah.
I think in total.
And I mean, obviously the agent has to kind of be like, okay, I mean,
no, she was, hey, they weren't in a rush.
True. It was off market. So it wasn't like, right. Okay.
There was no urgency. It just, we presented a generous offer.
Right. And so they're like, go ahead and do your due diligence then. We'd like to know too. Yeah.
And the sellers had no idea.
No.
They had no idea that supposedly, right, in all the disclosures, they had no idea that this was going on, or that this plumbing system was designed this way. So I had multiple meetings with the city of Escondido and their top engineers, because this is
a problem now.
We were basically uncovering a huge problem for the city.
100%.
Because if there was issues with, these old pipes and flooding and leaking and damage done, who's responsible for it? So this was basically a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a ticking time bomb before.
Right.
And so the city was getting involved, passing the buck to each department.
Always.
I knew everybody there by name. They all knew me.
They're like, here comes Aaron.
Yeah, because I had more paperwork. And, I'm someone that's, if I'm going to get into this, I'm committed.
You're going to see it through
all the way.
Yeah.
That's just how we roll.
Right.
And so, until I can't,
right,
I'm going to exhaust every opportunity to get this deal done, get this sweet little lady the home that she wanted. And
she's still being sweet through all this, by the way?
Yes.
Okay.
But that sweetness was starting to wear off.
Okay.
Because things were challenging and getting frustrating.
Right.
And now this is opening a whole new can of worms that the excitement was wearing off, because it's like, this is intense.
If she buys it, she's going to have to, right.
So how do we handle this?
Right.
Whose responsibility is it? Is it the city's? Is it is it going to be the new buyer? Wow. Is it the existing? It's just, how do we navigate through this? So we found out through these architectural documents that you could barely see, but we found out where the sewer lines were going. We had to get departments of the city. I don't even remember what they're called, but I was talking to department heads of the engineering department, basically, for the city, to try to figure out where everything is connected. Right. And we had to play this huge connection game. And when we found out, everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is, and if it's not just this house, chances are it's happening to other houses.
That's what I was just going to say. Like,
also,
it it's got to be all the ones that were kind of built in that time period. If the city has never like gone through and been like, oh,
Yeah.
let me update all the sewer lines, because city will come through and update the main line and look to see where everyone's connection is or whatever. So if that hasn't happened in 50 plus years or whatever it was, then they're like, this is not the only one that's going to be this way.
They wanted nothing to do with this.
Of course not, because it's just going to cost millions of dollars.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, because then they had to actually do some work.
Exactly.
Like not just pass, oh, you know what, call you know what?
Because that's how they
Contact
got
us.
here anyway, by the way. Because it was just like, oh, well, no one's complaining, hasn't overflowed, it hasn't broken, it's fine, like that kind of thing.
And so we found solutions, right? We were problem solvers.
Yeah.
So we solved the problem. We made it work. It was a $40,000 job. They had to trench the entire backyard, and she was like, let's go for it.
Wow.
I want the house. We've gotten this far,
No turning back
no
now.
turning back. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So crazy transaction. We ended up closing escrow.
Wow.
And the niceness had completely worn off at this point. It was frustrating. I get it. Everybody was frustrated with the transaction, and
Even when it closed, she was mean?
well, yes.
Oh.
So the day we closed, I wanted just to give her the biggest hug, and she totally just basically shrugged me off. She gave me this like the side shoulder hug.
She was like, yeah.
Yeah, basically, I'm like, we did it. I reached out my arms, and I'm like, I'm so happy for you. And I tried to reach, and she kind of gave me the whole side shoulder thing, and I just didn't know what was going on. And I'm thinking, like, why are you being like this?
After all the work I've
we
just did.
I got you the house. We've gotten through this crazy transaction. I've driven from the beach where I live to Escobedo thousands of times,
which is
to try to make this.
drive.
I'm backwards on the deal because it was a
No, the commission at that point is not. No.
But for me, it was just getting
Principle,
it done. It was
right.
principle. I'm
Right.
going to finish what I started.
Right.
I'm going to
Which
get
is
you the
amazing,
house.
because most people wouldn't do that. So
Do whatever it takes.
Right.
Thanks,
Yep.
Grant Cardone.
yes, it's true.
So I get it. So we close the transaction. I'm like, you know what? I did what I needed to do. We're done.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a call. About 5 days later, from the agent that represented the sellers for this house.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, hey, what's going on? And she goes, what's happening to the house? And I'm like, what do you mean what's happening to it? What's going on? And she's like, why is it on the market for sale? And I'm like, what do you mean it's on the market for sale? She goes, yeah, there's a for sale sign in the front yard. And I just talked to the agent, and she's selling the house.
What?
And I'm like, what do you mean she's selling the house?
Aaron.
So 4 days later, the home is on the market for sale, not with us, by the way, with some other agent. I have no idea who this person was. And the agent that we had represented the sellers, and I had grown up, kind of close through this
Of
transaction.
course,
She was super patient, and she was great to work with, and what is going on? Why is it on the market for sale? What happened? And I said, I have no idea. And my heart just, I started pounding, and I didn't know what to think. And I just felt like I just got punched in the stomach, from this. And it's, what do you mean it's on the market? Sure enough, I go on Zillow and
there it is.
or on MLS, and there it is on the market.
And obviously she hasn't
sale.
lived into it.
No, not at all. There was a $40,000 job of trenching the whole backyard. There was no plumbing that was established. It was a big job first. She was living in her home in Bonsall
Right.
while this was being done. That was the plan. And so what happened? So what apparently happened is she got super cold feet, freaked out because of how big of a job this was going to be.
Okay.
And apparently the contractors were saying, look, this is a $40,000 job. This is our bid, but these are some other issues we think we might be running into that could potentially cost this, and this. And it turned into this $40,000, potentially $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job because they were redoing everything, which she was willing to spend that chunk of money. But from what I found out, she got really cold feet and was so embarrassed and was so, I don't even know the right word. Just, to not call me, she just felt so I don't want to say she felt bad because she never took my phone call and I never got a chance to speak with her.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's almost like she was mad at you or like feels forced into it, but like that's not who you are, and that's not.
No, not at all.
She could have pulled out at any time, but why go through with it? And then
anytime. So we closed. 4 days later, the home is on the market with another agent.
That's so bizarre. I'm sorry. That sucks. Okay, well, let's play a game. Maybe that'll make you feel a little bit better.
Let's play a game.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
First thing that comes to your mind.
Okay.
Real quick. Okay. The game is called Punch List because we hit you with 3 questions. I have to say that every time. Okay. What is the craziest? Yeah.
After that story.
Yeah, exactly. What is the craziest or pettiest thing that's ever killed or almost killed one of your deals?
The craziest thing that's...
People have been like a microwave, a refrigerator seal, like just stupid things that we're like, we'll buy that for you.
The seller refusing to move out of the house.
Oh.
Me having to call the cops because he wouldn't hand over keys.
I mean, and you closed.
We closed.
He no longer owns the property. That's how that goes.
No longer owns the property.
And won't leave.
And so we closed on the property. We gave him 24 hours to move out.
Right.
And he just didn't get his stuff out.
Lovely.
And he wouldn't hand over keys. He just refused to go.
Wow. All right. Well, you got him out with the cops.
We called the cops, but we didn't have to have them actually show up.
Oh, okay.
So it got to that point.
But he was like, okay, fine. Was all his stuff still there? Had he not moved out?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
He hadn't
packed, nothing.
Yes. It was one of those.
Working with the public is so fun. Anyway. Okay. What is your biggest pet peeve?
Oh, my biggest pet peeve.
I mean, I've got like so many.
With real estate or just in general?
Yeah. Could be anything.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say as the past couple of years, people that drive wearing masks in their car with the windows rolled up.
Sure. Sure. I mean, that's a fair point.
I still don't understand that. No disrespect to anybody watching this if that's you. But
make your own choice.
That's just the first thing that comes to mind.
I don't understand, but yes, agreed. I hear you. I'm really interested in this question. I think I kind of, maybe I know now after talking initially, but if you could be anything other than a real estate agent, what would you be and why?
Ooh, good question. Well, I can share what I wanted to be.
Okay.
So my previous career, as I mentioned before the podcast, was in fitness. And so at the time I was doing big boot camp programs and a lot of personal training. I was doing some fitness modeling work in Los Angeles. And
That's
so
cool.
I wanted to be the next P90X guy.
Yeah.
Like that was my thing.
Yeah.
I wanted a video series and I wanted
Which is super cool.
to sell millions of copies so I could have tons of residual income and I didn't have to do any of this work anymore. I wanted to be that kind of an iconic figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not anymore. That was a previous career aspiration.
Fair. Yeah.
But that was a goal of mine at the time.
Which is a great goal to have, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to create my own legacy in the space.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We need to have you back because I feel like we have more things to talk about.
There's a lot more
to share. So anyway. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next week. Bye. Thanks for listening. Behind the Lockbox is produced and edited by Property Showcase Group. If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review this podcast. Thanks for your support. See you next week.